Captain Jaffa's orange grows. Microchips is us. iPhone cameras us. Taco salads us. Knows us. Olive Garden us. White Cloth for us. Sabra Hamas. Hasbara sus.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Bad Hasbara.
It's the world's most moral podcast, and you must be the world's most moral listener because you're listening to it.
That's right. Congrats to you for being so moral. My name is Matt Lieb. I'm your most moral co-host.
I'm Daniel Mate. I'm the other most moral co-host.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Bad Hasbara. We love you all. We thank you all. And we also praise you for knowing that this podcast has a right to exist. An inalienable right to exist.
Damn right.
Why does
to alienate? You can't. It's an inalienable.
It's impossible, and it's anti-Semitic, actually, to not let us exist. Everyone else gets to exist. Why does The Daily with Michael Barbaro have the right to exist, but not Bad Hasbara, the world's most moral podcast? It's fucked up. Give us 5 stars and review on whatever apps that you have that listen to podcasts for you. That's a sentence. And make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube. We're almost at 30,000 subscribers.
Are we?
Yeah, we're like a few away from 30,000 subscribers.
Wow.
Yeah, it's I would say it's impressive. But then I'll look at like a channel that's just like a guy who like animates cats. I guess that's hard. They deserve more fun. But like a chud who talks nothing, doesn't talk about anything other than like hating migrants, and they'll have like 100 million, subscribers, and I'll be like, damn, that's not fair. That guy's a piece of shit. We're not pieces of shit. We should have 30,000 subscribers. That's what I'm saying. I think that's what I'm saying.
Let's get there.
Yeah, we're almost there. We're getting close. One day. Please go to the Patreon and sign up if you would like to get an extra episode every week. Patreon.com/badhasbara. And shout out to producer Adam Levin on the ones and twos.
You're emotionally damaged. Jewishly.
He is the most emotionally damaged of all of us. This guy needs therapy. I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm throwing shade. We all need therapy. But yes, thank you so much to our wonderful producer, Adam Levin, who needs and refuses therapy because, some people just got to keep it real.
He's a mental health refusenik.
Yeah, exactly. I would love to go back to therapy. It's been too long. I can't like call up my old therapist. I feel like this is why I don't succeed at therapy, Daniel. I go for a few months and then eventually I get embarrassed that I just have the same problems over and over. Mm-hmm. And then I want the therapist to feel good. So I say that I tell the therapist, oh, you cured me. And then I leave and then I try to find another therapist.
And then you feel embarrassed about it.
Yeah. Well,
and then you need to find another therapist to help you deal with the shame that was triggered by the first therapist.
Yeah, exactly. Matt goes for both kinds of CBT. I don't know what that means. What is CBT?
I know cognitive behavioral therapy is one of the meanings.
Yeah.
But there must be some other
Yeah.
secret acronym there that Adam knows.
Cock and ball torture. All right, there we go.
You, Matt.
I should have known.
The structure of the joke suggested.
Yeah, we knew there was something there. We just didn't know that it was going to be cock and ball torture. Speaking of which, I was just realizing that like at this point, I can't look at the British Broadcasting Company logo without thinking about the other BBC.
Which is?
Big Black Cock. Oh, you don't know about Big Black Cock?
I don't.
I mean, hey, no, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
You don't need to know. Not everybody knows about Big Black Cock, I guess. Today's episode is brought to you by Doctors Without Borders. Medical aid for Palestinians works for the health and dignity of Palestinians living under occupation.
Speaking of health and dignity, what a nice segue.
Listen, not all my segues are necessarily going to be good. Some of them are going to embarrass me and my family. But that's what this podcast is. Medical aid for Palestinians works for the health and dignity of Palestinians living under occupation and as refugees. They provide immediate medical aid to those in great need while also developing local capability and skills to ensure the long-term development of the Palestinian healthcare system, which we all know has been just utterly decimated by the Israelis, and they need whatever money you can give them. So please go to map.org.uk to donate now. That's map.org.uk. Please do that now. Mr. Mate Alika, tell me what Metallica. Yeah, you did it better. What's the spin?
Couple of things today. This, Timothy Chalamet was on SNL doing his Bob Dylan homage.
Impression.
I guess it wasn't an impression. He just did a couple of Bob Dylan covers, and they were.
Wait, was he the musical guest?
He was the host and the musical guest. I'm sure the film company made that.
God, yeah, they were That's a give me shul, give me fire,
give me fire.
That which I desire.
Nice.
That's a beautiful.
Give me shul, give me fire, give me that. That sounds like an incitement to arson at synagogues.
It does, but that's not what Adam meant.
That's right.
Although he does need therapy. So Timothy Chalamet was.
So yeah, he came on to promote his Bob Dylan movie, which I still haven't seen, and he did a couple of relatively obscure Bob Dylan songs, Outlaw Blues, and I think Three Angels. Okay. But I remembered this song the other night. I'm like, no, this is the only Bob Dylan song that should be done right now. It's from the album Oh Mercy, produced by Daniel Lanois in 1989. And the song is Everything is Broken. And it's just, I was listening to it, and it just, to me, it's like the song that just describes the world right now. Everything is broken. Great blues rock song. And then the other one, can we pull up that Elie Wiesel tweet that I sent you this morning? Because it relates to this next one. Arson. Speaking of arson, incitement to arson.
Speaking of giving me shul, give me fire.
Yeah. We have Arsen Ostrovsky. His name is named after burning things down.
He's by the way, he's everyone's favorite pro-Israel human rights lawyer. This is one of the first of many accounts I saw that were pro-Israel, like Zionist human rights lawyers, where you were just like, oh, I guess they meant defense attorney, because when someone says human rights lawyer, you think prosecuting human rights violators, not defending them. But
hey, Matt, look to your. I guess it's to your right, or is it to your left? I want us to be looking at. Let's look at Elie Wiesel.
Okay, I'm looking.
Screenshotable. Are we looking at him?
Oh yeah, I'm looking at him.
We're with.
Oh no, you got to look the other way. You got to look the other way. Yeah.
No, I don't. Not on my screen. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, I thought it would be a nice trick. Anyway, the point is, Arsen Ostrovsky, for Holocaust Remembrance Day, which for some reason it coincides with the commemoration of the liberation of Auschwitz. And I was reading in what's his name, Yitzhak Laor's book, The Myths of Liberal Zionism, about how that was deliberate, that Germany decided, okay, we're not going to commemorate anything that actually happened on our soil. We'll commemorate the liberation of a Polish concentration camp.
Right.
Anyway,
Those
that
damn
became
Polish.
Holocaust Remembrance Day, and everyone's posting solemn memes. And here he's posting a quote from Elie Wiesel, who was a rabid Zionist, who said, "It was not man's inhumanity to man; it was man's inhumanity to Jews." Elie Wiesel on the Holocaust, and this is like such a perfect Zionist-coded Holocaust remembrance quote.
Sure.
In it because it's got this passive-aggressive, like, you're not commemorating it enough. You're not remembering that it was Jews enough. But it ends up sounding like something that Adolf Eichmann's lawyer would say, like, as an exculpatory technicality. Point of order, Your Honor.
Point of order.
Actually, it was not a crime against humanity. It was a crime against Jew-manity.
We have specifically classified as sort of a different species type thing.
We would never do that to humans. We covered that in the Nuremberg laws. So anyway, Ever since I saw that tweet all morning, I've had Devo, are we not men? We are Devo in my head. Are we not men? We are Hebrew.
Elie Wiesel also said it was not man's inhumanity to man. It was man's inhumanity to Devo.
That's right.
Yes.
So
Everyone
that's
knows
a
it.
long, convoluted answer to your question about the spinning. That's just what's been spinning in my head.
That's what's been spinning around in the old noggin. All right. It is time to bring in our guest who this has been a long time coming collaboration between us and this next guest. You may know them. They are an anti-Zionist Jewish influencer with millions of views on social media and an author of both science fiction and a new nonfiction book forthcoming, Genocide Bad, which comes out in March. Ladies and gentlemen, everyone else, it is our pleasure to welcome Sim Kern to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Like I said before the show started, I'm like a huge fan. I listen every single week. So really excited to be here.
That is such a welcome surprise. Because I've obviously, I've been watching your content, since October 7th, since not too long after that, started seeing your videos pop up on my feed.
We are both citizens in good standing of Sim City.
That's right. Yes. We enjoy Sim City. We hate when the kitchen goes on fire. Other references to that game that I don't really play, but I know of. Sim, what is it about this podcast that's just so good?
Really hitting them with the tough questions right off the bat. Yeah,
starting
that's how
early
we do with our guests.
Why a lot of people,
it's that hard-hitting journalism.
A lot of people tell you, and I think tell me also, that their content like helps them feel sane, especially like I think other anti-Zionist Jews, like we're so isolated from many people formerly in our communities.
Yes.
And so like the combination of like the Jewish humor that I grew up around, and but also like a rational worldview grounded in an understanding that all people are deserving of human rights, and the Genocide Bad, as
Genocide
is the title
Bad.
of my book. Just sometimes like hearing that on the car ride is a reminder that like everyone in the world hasn't been completely co-opted by Zionism.
Yes. That's a lot of that is exactly why I enjoy your content as well. Plus the added bonus of being well researched and educational, which we totally would do if
you weren't doing it already. You have.
If I wasn't already doing it, if you weren't doing it, see, you already
have the
market.
Literacy thing down.
Yeah,
you have the you've got the market cornered on knowing what you're talking about.
I would much rather read books than have to like comb through Israeli TikToks the way y'all do, and Israeli Hasbara, like going right to the source.
No, I realized we made a huge career mistake in terms of what we decided to talk about on this podcast. We could have, I enjoy reading books. I like book. Speaking of book, I read an advanced copy of your book, Sam, and I wanted to discuss some of it because, it's great. And it gave me a bunch of new, rhetorical tools that I didn't previously have. One of which that I want to talk about at the beginning here was I was introduced to the concept of deference politics from your book. And this is, could you describe or explain what deference politics is?
Yeah, so I got this term from Olufemi Otaiwo, who wrote this book, Elite Capture, How the Powerful Took Over Identity Politics and Everything Else. I believe Taiwo coined the term deference politics. But in Genocide Bad, I talk a lot about all the different ways that Israeli.
How long is it going to be until the elites capture the term deference politics? And
I know.
Oh, it's already. I'm sure it's already happened.
We're taking it.
But basically, so deference politics is how identity politics are weaponized against the left.
Yes.
And so Israel and Hasbara in the West and in Israel do this in multiple different ways. So the most basic sort of way is saying, and what is deference politics, right? So
and maybe you could back up even one step. What was identity politics before it was captured and weaponized?
Yeah.
Great question.
So identity
politics, because it's been bastardized, and I mean it was used to kill the Bernie Sanders movement in many ways. It's at least its captured version, right? People can be forgiven for thinking that it itself is just an epithet to describe meaningless identitarian signaling. But how did it start? Who started it? What did they mean? And what is this transformation and capture that you're describing?
Sure. So identity politics was a term coined in the 70s by a group of Black queer feminists who felt like their identities weren't being respected within either like the Black civil rights movement or the feminist movement. And they were having to like sever off parts of their identity when they were engaging in politics on either of those fronts.
Right.
So it was basically them saying, and this predates the coining of the term intersectionality, but basically it was the idea that we now refer to as intersectionality of like they can show up to organizing as a collective of Black, queer, feminist women. They don't have to compromise. They don't have to choose. They can be all those things at once. And their idea was for coalitional organizing so that identity groups like Black queer feminists could get together with, Black men, with groups of, Latina feminists, whatever, and build a coalition where they're all working together towards collective liberation, but within identity groups. And I think you see that vision reflected in the Free Palestine movement right now, right?
Sure,
like when you have anti-Zionist Jews and Palestinians, coming together to do actions together, but within their identity groups, that was sort of the vision of the Combahee River Collective, which was the group that started this.
So in a sense, it's differentiation with an eye towards solidarity. It's
never meant.
It's insisting upon the particular perspectives and standpoints of a certain group and the material interests that only that group is going to be able to relate to from a quote unquote lived experience place, but without any notion of that being the stopping point or the end point or the point. The point is, let's make sure our perspective is we understand our perspective and we can speak for it within the broader struggle, which is the only way any meaningful change is ever going to happen.
Right. Yes. Also, these identities, the idea of like identity politics starting, or at least the way in which people frame identity politics is like, oh, people only care about what you are, what race or gender, as if like, the people who invented this idea of identity politics, this term that you're talking about, were already dealing in spaces in which there was kind of just flattened broad identity markers that erased people who didn't fit neatly into them. For example, like you said, the feminist movement or Black liberation movement. Black queer women were like, it is kind of not one size fits all. And so, the idea of like, as soon as they talked or invented identity politics, that's when everything fell apart. As soon as people started like being like, hey, I'm here. It's like, shut up. There used to be a time when a white man, and I'm sorry, but you know what I mean? That's what, it seems like, it seems like the focus on identity politics as a bad thing has kind of taken over the conversation about the importance of solidarity. Yeah,
and that's why I think now when people speak negatively of identity politics, what they're referring to is deference politics, which is this weaponization of it. Yeah. So identity politics was never meant to be used to silence people's concerns. It wasn't meant to be used as a way of fracturing solidarity on the left, but that's exactly how deference politics works. Yes. So like Taiwo's definition of deference politics is when identity is used to silence, to fracture. And it's basically a politics that asks you to defer to the most marginalized person in the room that you are in. Right. Yes. So It
Which
sounds
is like this happens so often, and it's so nice to actually have a term to encompass this that doesn't throw the idea of identity politics or intersectionality under the bus, because those are important. Yeah, it's just great.
right. So, and I see Hasbara's using it on many different levels.
Oh,
so
yeah.
like the top level that's sort of the most obvious is just like listen to Jews, center
Right.
Jews, the Holocaust. Jews are always the most marginalized. You must listen to Jews.
Yes.
There's with the deference politics also, there's always the question, which Jews?
Right, exactly.
The
Yes.
reason this is a tool that elites can use is because elites can control who has access to whatever the room is. If you're being asked to defer to the most marginalized person in the room, they can control who's the most marginalized person in that room and
Right.
make sure that's someone who's going to align with their interests.
100%.
So
yeah,
they're-
and putting aside the fact that you'd have to do a pretty heavy sales job on me to get me to buy the idea that in your average room where there are multiple people of multiple identities, in this day and age, it's the Jew
Right.
or the Israeli who
Yeah.
comes anywhere close to being the most marginalized.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Even if it was true that we should defer to the most marginalized, which I think you're right, runs into immediately, even if you're talking about listen to women, listen to Palestinians, listen to trans people, which one?
Well, right.
So
It's
then
not a
that's
monolith. You know, you do not,
Yeah.
you're not born into an identity and given a card of like, here's all the things you must think and believe.
Right. And
So-
also, there is no one person who represents that identity, and it's using someone's identity specifically as a cudgel against those who don't share that identity. Against speaking out about what they are saying that identity is or isn't doing, is suffering, isn't suffering. You see this all the time where they're like, oh, you say that Israelis, oppress Palestinians. Well, here's an interview with an Israeli Arab about how great it is to be here in Israel.
Yeah, they can trot out whoever they want who's going to speak on their behalf, or like son of Hamas.
Yeah, son of a
Right.
is-
And we can try to, I mean,
Yes.
but let's try to be fair. On the flip side, we could
Mhm.
trot out breaking the silence, right? If they
Sure.
say the Israeli army is engaged in most moral activities and is conducting itself according, we could trot out someone from Shovrim Shtika who says no, we're
Right.
not. But we're not saying defer to this person.
No.
We're not saying
Yes.
we're not holding them as automatically, but we're just trying to trying to knock a peg out of the unanimity that their side, that their position
Mhm.
rests on. It's not the identity of someone isn't irrelevant, but it's also not dispositive in and of itself. It doesn't prove anything.
You have
Right.
to use critical thinking. Like
Yes.
you're going to have to use your
Wow.
brain.
What a concept.
And not just defer to like someone because of who they were born as. When you actually break it down, that's a pretty kind of tokenizing racist idea that like because you were born to a certain subgroup, your opinions
Yes.
are correct.
And also it does, I think it also encourages, at least in like leftist spaces, or in spaces that try to do social justice, it kind of encourages bad behavior and manipulative behavior amongst people, where you can weaponize your identity or the identity of others for the sake of vying for power. I just a real quick story. I was I did a show recently at a college. I won't say which one. And it was there was like an encampment going on.
PragerU.
It was at PragerU, and it was just me and one other comedian who were booked on it. We're going to do comedy at the encampment. It's a very small college, small encampment, and about 10 minutes into the other comedian set, who went first, all of a sudden, the organizer of the event went up to her on stage and said, can you come here real quick? And then they literally went behind like a wall, and the whole audience was just like, what's happening? They canceled the show right then and there. And there was just this moment where I was asking the person who invited me, who was an anti-Zionist Jewish person, I said, "What's going on?" And they're like, "Well, I think that I think we're worried that it's offensive." And the jokes themselves were very much, I wouldn't consider them offensive, but I can see how they would be. And the person who kicked her off was a Palestinian student. And there was just kind of this moment where I was like, did you guys all discuss this? And she said, no, well, she's the only Palestinian student on campus and kind of is the leader of this group. And we just kind of do whatever she says.
Defer to her.
And I was like, okay, I mean, listen, we should of course be listening to Palestinian voices. But I think that what we end up doing when we take this like complete deferential stance towards organizing or anything is we end up kind of turning what should be a good thing into a tokenizing thing. It becomes like how can we do this without getting in trouble, as opposed to like kind of looking at it more broadly, like this is a sea of students, or there's a lake of a puddle. There was a few students of students who I think are, they're camping out and depressed, and maybe it might not be good for morale if you kick off the comedian 10 minutes into the set. You know what I mean? That's just
So with deference politics, right? The top layer that I think at this point, if you're in the movement, the like defer to Jews thing isn't working. So then they get a little more sophisticated, and then they trot out what I call marginalized human shields, which is like they say, look at how gay our army is. Look at all our women flying bombs, genociding children. And the story there is that like there's this it relies upon your belief in like a racist monolithic Arab horde that's like synonymous with the Taliban, and you believe that that's what Palestinians are, which is ridiculous if you know anything about Palestinian culture. And that, the only thing protecting Israelis from the type of extermination that they're meting out upon Palestinians is the IDF, the IOF.
That was like Shail Ben Ephraim's Holocaust Remembrance tweet, where he's like, Israel is the only thing stopping another Holocaust, another genocide.
Right. And as they're doing it.
Yeah.
And Kamala Harris's whole presidency was about that too, right? Like there are still
she was never president. Sim.
I mean, candidacy, presidential candidacy was about, defer to this Black and South Asian woman. And if you don't vote for her, you're racist.
Black or South Asian.
Right. Yeah. Could be both. Could be neither. Yeah. No. Exactly. It was immediately. She would say, I'm speaking. You know.
That's deference, right? Defer to me. I'm speaking.
Exactly.
And like the outrage of liberals that some people would continue to criticize and question in the face of that. But I think that given the number of third-party voters, especially within the Arab community, like a lot of people aren't falling for that anymore. But what you were talking about, Matt, in your story is like the most sort of sophisticated type of Hasbara, which is the way like deference politics is used within our own community to shut down constructive projects. Yes. So Taiwo talks about the difference between like deference politics focuses on like semantics and symbols. Focusing all our energy on like not offending anyone, not, using the correct wording, and moral purity, right? Like they were concerned about the moral purity of having this, comedy event during, I don't know, we should be taking genocide more seriously or something, right?
Right.
Whereas a constructive project is something that's like building community or building power, right? And so sometimes I don't think a lot of people realize. Now, I'm not saying the Palestinian who objected to your comedy show was in any way like motivated by destructive tendencies. Right. But we have learned to do this to each other from literally like paid infiltrators. And I don't think that the left has, and like many people on the internet, even like other influencers that have as big of a reach as I have, I think so much we are not really reckoning with and living with the reality of the fact that Israel pays thousands of people to be digital infiltrators of our movement. Like thousands of people whose full-time job is operating sock puppet accounts on the internet, where they are like putting up a Palestinian flag, giving themselves a name that sounds Palestinian. You'll see their content. If you go look on Instagram, it's like a couple random lifestyle pictures that don't really have anything to do with each other.
Right.
And then these people are spending all day commenting on posts pretending to be Palestinian and like sowing discord and chaos.
Right.
And I know they exist, first of all, because there's like reports on this. Israel admits to doing this. Like this is widely known. And it's not just Israel, of course, right? Russia has sock puppets. I'm sure the CIA has sock puppets. We know that like conservative PACs have sock puppets.
Everyone has sock puppets.
Everyone's using sock puppets.
It's a question of how much time you have and what your politics are as to what you're doing with them. But yeah, governments absolutely use sock puppets.
And I've literally,
you guys have no idea how much I'm tempted to take off a sock right now and just.
And I've literally been like arguing with people, claiming they're Palestinian or Syrian.
Yes.
Get into them a little bit with it in the comments. And sometimes they'll tell on themselves by calling me a self-hating Jew or a capo. And no Palestinian would ever reach for that.
That's
it's
the
like,
dead giveaway.
Hello, Shlomo. Like, that's you. I see you there.
Okay, but so the possibility that we're dealing with sock puppets and cutouts and all that, that's the easy way of relegating this to the bin of the ridiculous, and we don't have to take it seriously. But you and I, Sim, we both know from experience, we've dealt with situations that bring up more complex questions than this, right? So when I met you, and you write about this in the book, actually, we were organizing an event. You were organizing it, I should say, and I was, for some reason invited to be part of it. And this is all very new to me.
I hadn't content.
Well, but it was just like very new to me that I was creating content about this topic and that anyone gave a shit. But suddenly I was being invited to do things, and it was a Hanukkah event for Palestine, right? So 8 anti-Zionist Jews, and it's right around the time that I met Matt too, and there were some objections both to the idea of the event itself, like the notion of the event, and then to some of the people, a kind of a rotating list of objections to different members of our panel for this and that. They're suspected of being Israeli sympathizers or agents, or one person's an Israeli citizen, or so on and so forth, right? And we were dealing with, I think, you as the organizer were dealing with what seemed to me to be a pretty confusing barrage of like a mishmash of bad faith, smearing, and just kind of trying to take down what was certainly intended as a constructive event, a space for anti-Zionist Jews to speak to each other on a holiday that's ostensibly about liberation in the middle of a genocide, and to try to mark the occasion and meet it in a way that was appropriate and morally serious, but also connect us, not cut our Judaism off at the pass, and to assert our right to be Jews on a Jewish holiday in defiance of this fucking so-called Jewish state doing what it's doing. And at the same time, so there was some of that. There might have been some constructive criticism in there. There might have been some non-constructive criticism in there. And I thought that the best kind of response we had available, and we ended up kind of going with it, was, I'm just curious what you think about this in retrospect, given that you've written about it, was, yeah, okay, listen to Palestinians. Which ones? We have thousands of Palestinians telling us, please do this. Each of our panelists has thousands and thousands of Palestinian followers who appreciate their particular medicine that they're bringing. Are any of us perfect? No. Are any of us, are we the Palestinian liberation movement? Hell no. Do we need to know when to park our voices at the side and make space for others? Yes. That's good solidarity politics. But the notion that because some website, one of which was, I think, suspected of being a cutout, right? The one that was doing a lot of the smearing
Yeah.
is raising hell about one or two of our panelists, that we should say, oh guys, sorry, the Palestinian people don't want us to do this. But it was tricky. It was uncomfortable. And you were in the most uncomfortable position of all. Can you speak about that?
Yeah, well, and that was before I read this book, and that's why I found this book so enlightening, because it gave me so much. And that's the Elite Capture book, which I'm plugging more than my own book. It was confusing, and Hadar Cohen actually was the one who had been doing this kind of thing longer than any of us.
Yeah,
and her response to it was just like, "This is what happens. Like, if you are Jewish." And being vocal as an anti-Zionist Jew, you are going to get backlash. You are going to get these people saying Jews shouldn't have a voice, Jews shouldn't be centered in the movement. And I don't think that
centering is another one of these words that
one of these words.
What does that actually mean?
What does that mean? People follow me because they find my content enlightening. I'm not at the center of Instagram. Wherever that is, I'm very far from it. Yeah. And our little YouTube event was very far from the center of anything.
Right.
That said, you can understand how a Palestinian, I can have empathy for a Palestinian being like, wow, Jews are talking, so they must know what they're talking about. Like the deference that goes to general, us anti-Zionist Jews, the amount of, I can imagine someone resenting.
Oh, for sure.
Like Najla Saeed said to me, like, what? I've been talking about this for fucking my entire life. This is my entire life. Now a bunch of Jews have come around and joined the bandwagon, and we're supposed to applaud and cheer. No, I understand that sentiment.
Yeah.
Right. In a broad sense, that's like, that is the most legitimate thing to say. In fact, it's something that I think we say a lot on the show, which is just like that it is almost embarrassing that we get attention at all, because it just reinforces this thing of like of deference politics in a way, because people want to be safe in their critique of Israel and what the media they consume about it, because they're like, well, if I'm listening to Jews talk about it, it feels safer than listening to Palestinians, which is kind of the way in which Hasbara have set it up. They've set it up for you to defer to Jews, an American Jew, over a literal Palestinian who like lives in Palestine.
And that's why, like, I am getting called a grifter for having written this book. And I never would have written it if I wasn't asked. I was asked to write this book by a Palestinian editor for a Palestinian-owned press. Interlink Press is the only Palestinian-owned publisher in the U.S. And one of the first things I say in the foreword is, like, it makes me very uncomfortable to be writing this book. Right. Yeah, but the reality is, like, this editor thought my voice was useful in the movement and would be useful as a book. Yeah. And so that's the voice I'm going to listen to over some random sock puppet account where I don't even know who you are. I don't know what your face looks like, but you're telling me like, oh, this Sim's a grifter for writing this book.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it boils down to, you have to think critically. You have to think like, something that's helpful for me is like, look at the impact of people's actions rather than trying to figure out whether someone's a sock puppet or just a young person who's been raised with this deference politics culture. It doesn't really matter if you learn to spot like impact over identity. So when it comes to like political engagement, just when someone brings up an idea, it's like, what is the impact of this idea? Is it building community? Is it building power? Is it constructive? Is it dealing with like meaningful life and death issues? Or is it destructive? Is it fracturing solidarity? Is it, is it focusing all our attention on something that's kind of symbolic and meaningless?
Right.
That sort of.
Also, what are the majority of the haters saying? See, this is what I put everyone. I'm a simple man. I put everyone in the category of cool or hater, and there are obviously subgroups of hater. And so, what I look at when it comes to this kind of critique is, I go like, all right, well, the majority of haters actually hate this because they love Israel and they think that this is bad for Israel. a small, couple of comments here or there, or even a small concerted effort of maybe 10 commenters hate it for being bad for, quote, like the movement. And then there's the rest of the people who are consuming it. And so I go like, all right, if only 10% of the haters are, pro-Palestine and 90% of the haters are pro-Israel, I could safely say that this is fine. you know what I mean? Like you want the majority of your haters to be something that you are politically opposed to. That's kind of how I feel about it in general. That's like, hey, listen, you're serving Zionist interests here, so I don't really think I'm being more harmful than what you're currently doing. There are, of course, fair critiques, but I do think that, and I think you should always be open to those critiques,
right?
But
because fair critiques would point to impact, like Sim is talking about. Like, I would be very interested to read an article, let's just say theoretically, if Vanity Fair wanted to, they just did a big article about Chapo Trap House. Well, if they wanted to, give us some shine.
Hey, Vanity Fair, if you're out there, we also have a podcast.
Yeah, no, that article wasn't a critique. It was just sort of a what have they been up to, and what's the post Bernie left up to. But what I'm saying is, if a movement publication, if anyone wanted to write about, here's what Bad Hasbara thinks they're doing,
right,
and here's some impacts I see that they're having that they don't realize they're having, and this is why they're negative. This is the impression they're creating. This is the ratio of Jewish to Palestinian guests. Here, I'm giving you guys some advice, some things to actually criticize us about, right? That would be one thing. But what happened with us with this Hanukkah event was these people are secret Zionists. They like it was in bad faith. It wasn't saying, cool, despite whatever benefits this thing might have or whatever positive effects it has, it actually has an insidious effect. It was smearing the intentions and the motives and the political projects of the members to try and completely discredit them and saying nothing they say should be taken seriously. And you got to back that up, otherwise you're just smearing people.
No, that's just hater shit.
That's just hater shit.
That's just what haters do. I think I want to just play a little bit of my favorite moment of deference politics being played out from a Noah Tishby video. I've wanted to play this video for a while. I haven't had a moment. And then I read you talking about deference politics and Genocide Bad, and I was like, oh, this is a perfect opportunity. So this is Noah Tishby interviewing someone who may surprise you in terms of their identity being, different than you'd think. Here we go.
If there is one reel, just one reel, that I want every Queers for Palestine and college campus demonstrator and all the encampments to see, is this reel. I just sat down with Yemen, who's a 20-year-old Arab, Muslim, Israeli, queer, gay, and amazing. Watch this.
I was born in Nazareth, in the north. I'm Arab and I'm Israeli, and I'm also gay, so it's kind of nice mix.
Very nice mix. Israel's having a lot of problems right now. People
very nice mix. I like that mix a lot. It's very useful for my purposes.
Actually, it's a perfect mix.
They found him.
Yeah.
They found one.
Yeah. In fact, we wrote down the mix before we even found you personally. We had a room where we all get together and said, what's the perfect mix right now to talk about Queers for Palestine?
Did she call him a queer at the beginning?
Yeah. She called him Arab, gay, Muslim, queer, and amazing. So kind of like queer and gay
as adjectives. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Israel, an oppressor, white colonialist, ethnic cleansing state. You are an Arab, Israeli, gay, 20 years old.
Okay, there you go. You are a gay. You are a homo.
Yes, you are, a gay guy, right? Mm-hmm. And you're also these other identity markers. Isn't it crazy that anyone would say that Israel's bad?
What do you say to them?
people outside.
You're a big
don't
gay.
know
I'm
what's
sorry.
happening
I
in
just
this
can't.
world.
Stop.
She's trying to. No, but just such a funny way to start
Yeah.
this conversation with the guy. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're gay, right? You're a super big gay guy. What isn't it? Can you repeat these government talking points for a second?
I'm Muslim. I came from a Muslim family. I left my village. I had to leave my village
Why?
when I couldn't stay there because I can't stay who I am really. Until now, I'm not in connection with my family.
I have to say, just having someone be like, "Oh, I had to leave my village," and say, "Well, why was it?" "Oh, because I'm gay," which is like somehow that's worse than having to leave your village because
you're Palestinian.
because you're Palestinian
Yeah.
and the government invaded and bombed your village, and now your entire family is dead or homeless. Like it's just priorities.
When I got
I
out
mean, this
from
is
my,
like the
from my
average, the
village,
story of the average, theater kid in New York City from Utah. I mean, why are they in Utah? They had to leave their village because,
That's right. That's a good point. And
which
no
is not
one's carpet bombing fucking Utah. Not
as
yet.
you say in your book, Sim, that even if Texas was to pass some kind of, vicious anti-queer legislation, you wouldn't be for the genocide of all, or the
Texans.
ethnic cleansing of all Texans.
There was a part in my book too where I talk about how there was a study done there was an article I talk about where one of the they examined a group of queer people who had left Palestine or left the West Bank and moved to Israel because of their queerness, because they were not accepted by their families, right?
Mhm.
And they bought into Israeli pinkwashing propaganda that things would be better in Israel. I was doing a search to look it up so I could quote it exactly, but basically once they got into Israel, because they were Palestinians from the West Bank, they weren't afforded any of the political asylum that because Israel prides itself on we provide political asylum for queer people from countries that aren't queer affirming, but not for Palestinians. So they weren't allowed to, the only work they were able to engage in was under the table work. So many of them ended up being forced into sex work.
Oh, wow.
They didn't have any of the assistance that other queer people who have asylum in Israel were able to get. And there were interviews
There's different
with them.
shades. There's different shades of pink, Sim.
Yeah.
That's right.
And they were saying I would have rather died in the West Bank. One of the
Wow.
interviewees was quoted saying, I would have rather died in the West Bank than come here. So that overall they expressed regret at having come into Israel.
Right.
Because their Palestinianism cancels out their queerness.
Yeah.
The apartheid is very clear about that. There are no exceptions for any Palestinians.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's there's no there's no smart bomb so smart that they're like, oh, we're just we're not going to kill any LGBTQ people. We're just going to kill cis white or cis Palestinian males.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna keep the video
Israel
going just because I
helped
want to see where this is
How?
going.
I got paid money. I
You got paid money from the country?
I got
'Cause it's
help.
a social. You got health
I got
insurance.
help. I got a place to sleep. I got a social worker to help me.
What would your life be like if you'd be living anywhere else in the Middle East?
I'm so lucky that I'm in Israel. Like imagine I just was born in Gaza. I would be killed already.
How do you think?
Yeah.
How would you? I mean, you might not be wrong about that, but I don't think you are saying you'd be killed by the idea.
What's the most likely method of death?
Yeah, just crazy. It's crazy at this point to like this was brought out, I think, maybe 6 months into the current iteration of the genocide, into the Gaza bombardment that happened after October 7th. And at this point, so many people had already been killed that I was just like, how can anyone say, with a straight face that this is an LGBTQ issue, and the idea that you would be targeted for being gay in Gaza, and that would be the number one reason why you might be killed. It's just that to me, that's just absolutely insane.
Well, and it's just this is Israeli propaganda that gets trotted out all the time. I mean, because of my haircut, I've been told, in my queer identity, I go by they them pronouns. I've been told, oh, you'll be killed in Gaza a zillion times over. So in the book, I have a chapter like all taking down pinkwashing. So a couple of things. Queerness was only like male homosexuality was only criminalized in Palestine because of the British. The British mandate, when it was under Ottoman rule, no one gave a fuck. It was not criminalized. When the British mandate came in, they enforced their like British code that they had for all their colonies, and it criminalized male homosexuality. So that was the first time that male homosexuality was criminalized in Palestine.
Wow.
And that is still the law on the books in Gaza, where it's still criminalized. So they decriminalized it in Israel, but they just like haven't gotten around to decriminalizing it in Palestine. Now there was a young man that people trot out all the time who was beheaded,
right?
Perhaps for being gay. I think about like 10 years ago. I've got it. I have like a bad memory for facts for someone who wrote it. In the book, I've got all the facts.
Yeah.
And but it was an extrajudicial killing. It wasn't done by the PA.
Interesting.
And the same thing has happened in Israel. There was a girl named Shira Banki who was stabbed to death at a pride parade. And like the same thing happens here in Texas. Like there are extrajudicial killings of people who are gay, unfortunately, all over the world. Right, and so, but that, for some reason, that one example is held up of like, oh yeah, Hamas will behead you. There's no evidence of Hamas ever, from what I saw in my research, ever like beheading people as part of their operations. And then there's active gay rights groups that organize in the West Bank. The PA did try to like shut down LGBTQ, some organizing groups a few years ago, and there were widespread demonstrations and they dropped that effort. So there, it's just farcical to say that Israel is so much more queer accepting than
much less Palestine. that they're so welcoming and sympathetic to the plight of gay Palestinians. Do you know what Israel does with Palestinian homosexuality in the occupied territories? Do you know what? Do you know what
blackmail?
Yeah, you know what use they put that to? That's what Palestinian queer people have to fear the most, is that Israel will
weaponize
that, leak
their identity and out them.
And use it to turn them collaborator. Yeah. And quite frankly, I don't give a fuck what Hamas's human rights record is with regard to sexuality or gender. I don't police.
Well, I think it's important to point out that it's important to point out that they're not beheading people. They're not.
Sure,
that is
what I'm saying is this.
False.
I don't think it's my place when I'm living in a country that is funding a supermax prison on the other side of the world to get all up in arms about the human rights
record of the prison
and progressive policy record of the prison gang that's risen up to control a tiny amount of what goes on within that fucking prison, when we're still the ones imposing the prison conditions and the occupation. It's just obscene. We have no right to speak on it. Yeah. That's my view.
Yeah. No,
I think you can still be considered. I wouldn't call them a prison gang. Also, I think they're a lot more complex and complex and multifaceted than that. And
sure.
And then I think, I have a chapter in the book called "But Hamas," which is all about like my response to all the "But Hamas" comments. Chapter. Yeah, and it's nuanced. It takes me 20,000 words to talk about what I think about Hamas. But
and what I love about that chapter is, at a certain point, you're about to wrap it up, and then you say, "This is where I was going to stop." Yeah. And then you go on for about 3 times the length. Yeah. Realizing there's so much more to say.
And actually, I had written it to a certain place, and then I heard Rashid Khalidi on y'all's show, and that coincided with, he actually gave me some notes on my book. He gave me notes on that chapter the same week that his episode with y'all came out. And he was like, you haven't thought about this hard enough. He was like, you need to meditate on this a little bit more.
Yeah.
So,
well, you sure did.
So I did, yeah. And because he's I mean, he's just such a careful thinker and knows the whole history. The chapter also goes into the whole history of Hamas based on him. You know, I'm totally deferring to his research and everything.
Sure.
There. But
that's good deference politics. Defer to really well.
Yeah.
Defer to experts.
Well, but for real, which
facts.
Palestinian do you listen to? I mean, for me, my compass, like he's definitely one of them.
Sure.
If he says something, I'm going to take heed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I also agree that it is, of course, way more complex than they're the number one prison gang. But it is the concept, I think, is or the metaphor, I think, is apt in general about it's hard to it's the idea of me sitting back here and just being like, what if I want to go into like I can't judge the resistance movement by like going into whatever boardrooms they have and seeing, what is the C-suite like? Do you guys have a diverse group of is your CFO and your it's like, no, they don't have that shit. Like this is a resistance movement and a government that Hamas has cobbled together and been able to create at least a state that is surviving under, even before the 7th, this incredible siege in which it just was, Israel controlled everything that goes in and out of there, including water, including, food, including the right to make food. So it is.
We don't have to like them. We do not have to like them, but condemnation presumes the right to condemn, a place to condemn from. And when when we are part of the system that is creating the conditions that puts them in power, what are we focusing on when we spend a bunch of time being like, geez, if only the Palestinians would get their shit together? Well, who's preventing them from getting their shit together? Right.
Well,
and then using vulnerable queer Palestinians as sympathy bait to try and get us to launder more bombs to bomb all of them and their straight relatives.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is to say I don't care what Hamas is doing, it almost kind of cheapens the efforts that the lengths that Hamas is going to be more moral than Israel. Look at the condition of the captives being returned, right? Yeah. So if Hamas was going around cutting off the heads of gay people, I would have no problem condemning. I have no problem condemning cutting off people's heads because they're gay. I'm universally opposed to that. But I'll never condemn Hamas as like, I'm condemning Hamas. I'm condemning armed resistance. You know what I mean? I'm condemning resisting the Israeli occupation. And I think that if we aren't able to like criticize at all a resistance group or like, then it's kind of meaningless when you actually look at all the ways they are conducting themselves with such greater humanitarian values than the IOF. You know what I mean?
That's a great point. And I think it's important to point that out for, all the reasons you stated, plus, examples of that being and you bring this up in your book, the often cited original charter of Hamas being, using Jews, talking about this is a war against, a resistance against the Jews. And then it being, updated in, what was it, 2007, in which they explicitly.
It was the year Sinwar took. Yeah. This was Sinwar's
this was a Sinwar. Yes,
it was
exactly.
2017 or 2018.
Was it 20? It was 2017 or 2018 when it happened.
Yeah.
And it, it's changed to explicitly point out that no, this is not, against the Jews. They updated their charter as, to say this is about Israel and Israelis and the Israeli government and occupation.
And they condemn anti-Jewish hate, like in Hamas's revised
in
charter.
Their charter.
Yeah.
And like, so yeah, if part of being critical is not just criticism in a negative, but criticism in a positive as well. So it is important to be able to take one with the other. I think it's just a question of when something is being very specifically utilized in order to manipulate people into dehumanizing this group of people that's already oppressed, even more so because you're like, well, not only
and ignore the crimes of this other group that's already powerful.
Exactly. It makes it harder to even want to confront any of the whatever the realities are of anything negative going on with the resistance group. So I definitely understand that as well.
It really is such a diabolical trick of language, you know.
Yeah. We're a very tricky people. You know,
I'm not saying we did it deliberately, but Zionism does it, right? What are the Palestinians supposed to call the Jews who did this to them? They are the Jews.
They are the Jews.
They're those Jews. Maybe we should call it those Jews, these Jews, them Jews, this specific group of Jews. But they just know the word "the" is a definite article, but it's not an all-encompassing article. It doesn't mean all the Jews everywhere. It means the Jews that we're always talking about because they're down the road with machine guns. The Jews up there in the quadcopter.
Right.
The Jews who call themselves the Jewish state over on the other side of that fence. The Jews, those Jews. You're supposed to not have a way of speaking about your, you know?
No, I agree. There's something about like the just that the added indignity of also having to shape your language in accordance with the Western sentiments that are also currently destroying you. It's like I don't think I could have that much grace. You know what I mean? I don't think I could be that strategic.
At a certain point, I probably want to kill all the Jews.
I think I would just be like, fuck you. I'll call you whatever I want. But
and Israelis, of course, are constantly calling Palestinians Arabs, which is they won't use the word Palestinian. And which is say the most racist shit about Arabs. But this is another example of deference politics, right? Where they'll put something like semantics, they'll put a word you're using as equal or greater value than like mass murdering tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people.
Yes.
And yet it's so on its face when you see it clearly ridiculous, but this is how like Western media just
watch out, Sim, you're gonna get us accused of being anti-Semitic.
we got a
Daniel pun.
Daniel, he loves the fun.
I love
my nervous
puns.
system, my nervous system just relaxed. I was getting so agitated. I needed that. That's how my brain nuts. Like that's my that's the only sex drive I have left is just
oh god, you start smoking a cigarette every time you make a good pun. So speaking of, one of the things we brought up in the last few minutes was the talking about the hostages who were recently returned. And I have an article that we are going to need to read. This is like some wonderful new Hasbara. But before we do that, we are going to take a quick break. So please, everyone, stick around. And we'll be right back. And we're back. This is Bad Hasbara, World's Most Powerful Podcast. We are here with Sim Kern, author of the forthcoming Genocide Bad, which comes out in March. March what? March
11th.
March 11th.
Yeah. So pre-order now.
Pre-order now. It's in. It'll be in the show notes. Okay.
I have some kind of pun floating around in my head. It's not perfect, Sim, but it has to do with your Bookstagram, and I'm just imagining like a dark version of you, like a
Genocide Rad.
Genocide Rad is good.
The Zionist version of it,
yeah, but like a sort of twisted timeline version of you, where you do an instructional course for people about how to sort of just kind of read things in passing and make a lot of money from it, and you can call it skim earn.
I like it. Okay, yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah,
there's a lot.
It's not very funny, but it
makes you think, though. You know, that's kind of like this podcast. You know, sometimes it's funny, but sometimes it makes you think. Yeah. Also, Sim Kern, your last name, you are the good Kern. You know, there's a bad Kern. There's a Lee Kern. I just want to point out, most likely no relation. That's people constantly think every Lieb, every, Goldberg, every last name is related. Most likely no relation, right? You're not.
Except
you're
we're
not
all related. We're all one people.
We're all one
Matt.
people. We're all one people.
We're not.
We are all,
We're not.
Yeah, no, very much not. Recently, the the Palestinians and the Israelis did a captives exchange, and there was some talk going around on social media and the like about the condition of the Israeli captives who were coming home. And some of it was, unfavorable in ways in which people were discussing it that I thought was like, low key inappropriate, where they were like fat shaming some of them for coming back still fat. That was kind of like what some people were saying, which I don't think is I don't think that's constructive to do that. But in general, the general sentiment was, wow, they all look like they were well taken care of for 15 months. Now, of course, looks can be deceiving. You don't know what somebody went through. But if you're just looking with your eyes, it does look like, at the very least, they do look healthy.
Yeah, no one is saying. I mean, I do see some people saying, and I find it just way overly credulous and silly when people are like, look at them, they're smiling and waving and speaking in Arabic. Like,
yeah.
Okay.
It's like
you can't imagine that someone would put on a brave face, especially on the day they're being released. You can't imagine that they might have been induced by fear of reprisals to some. You can imagine all kinds of reasons why you don't have to believe that these people now are like Hamas fans,
right? Or best friends,
or best friends.
Yes, I think it's important to meet somewhere in the middle where you, at the very least, are looking at the what appears to be the physical health
condition,
and they do look good. And I was wondering what the line would be on that. And then, of course, the Jerusalem Post, they came through in the clutch with an amazing piece. It's short and it's beautiful. Let's talk about it. This is Hamas altered hostages' appearance before release. Report from the Jerusalem Post staff. Despite nearly starving the hostages, Hamas used special techniques to make them look healthier and more energetic. I gotta find out what the Hamas skincare routine is, because it looks incredible. Adam believes they gave him the Miss Doubtfire surgery. That's when you just put on the mask.
It's actually Mrs. Ceasefire.
Mrs. Ceasefire, that's right. So from the article, Hamas has reportedly implemented and, quote, accelerated rehabilitation process for the hostages before their release. The terrorist organization, according to a report from N12, provides hostages with nutritious foods and stimulants shortly before their release to create the impression that they were treated well during their captivity. The practice has come to light amid the ongoing phased release of hostages. The report states that Hamas ensures hostages appear energetic and in good condition upon their return to Israel. However, testimonies from recently freed women paint a starkly different picture of their captivity. I got to say, using the idea of like, okay, I know you think what you're seeing are healthy individuals, but you don't know about Hamas's like breakthroughs when it comes to delivering huge loads of nutritious foods right before release. This is something that they've been, they've got the best protein shakes that you could imagine. They have just like, they give them Kiehl's facial creams. Everyone gets a facial. Everyone gets.
It's going to revolutionize the field of hangover cures.
Yeah. I mean,
do you ever wake up in the morning feeling like you've just spent 15 months in a tunnel?
Yeah.
Being bombed by your own country and starved by.
It just.
And when they go on to say, oh, and the women's stories paint a starkly different picture of their captivity, but they don't actually go on to share any quotes.
No,
stories in any way.
Yeah, they just the women's stories that I have in my head about what had happened paint a vastly different picture. Now, they do, at some point go on to talk about the, the fact that like, well, they were held in, in tunnels and in cages and whatnot. I don't know if these are based on actual reports of things that the hostages themselves said, or if this is just kind of their assumption. But in general, I really like the idea that they know that this is going to be a PR disaster, how good all of the Israeli soldiers look on their way out. It just makes you kind of laugh at the idea that they're like, Palestinians never invented anything. It's like, well, they clearly invented a way for the hostages to come out physically okay from captivity, which doesn't seem to be something Israel has been able to invent. Like, if Hamas has this technology, why don't you use this technology?
That's right.
You're the ones who care about PR more than fucking human rights. Wouldn't you be doing this to every Palestinian? If you're not going to be the most moral army, at least, if you're not going to be the most moral army, at least be the most cosmetic army. Right? Like, cosmetically moral. Yes,
I find it, there was also a CNN report saying, the captives were forced to eat bread and rice. And if you've been connected to Palestinian families over the past 16 months, like I've done a lot of fundraising, and like bread and rice are a very good day.
Yeah, that's
food in Palestine. That's good food. Like
bread and rice not made with animal feed.
Excited when they can get bread and rice. Right, exactly. And so like it's clear that the captives were being given at least as good or probably much better food and much more consistently than many Palestinian civilians had access to.
Yeah, and possibly even better food than they're getting in the serving in the IDF or being, just civilians in Israel. I mean, they're listen, bread and rice is nothing to sneeze at. Both of those things are food, and you can't just be like, they were feeding them things like bread and rice and crackers and cheese.
How dare they?
And it's like, where's the shakshuka? It's like, you can't have shakshuka every day in an active war zone. Come on, man. They were being given seawater. How did the potable water supply get cut off again? This is a great point. That one of the things that they mention in the article is, they were forced or they had to drink seawater. And it's like, that's, first of all, bullshit. Absolute fucking bullshit. The idea that they were like continually drinking seawater. That is not what was happening. You did cut off the water supply in Gaza. Kind of seems like you wanted them to drink seawater. That's all I'm saying. It is just like, it's such a stupid discourse. The fact that the Jerusalem Post like bit on this idea of like, you think they look good? Well, you're wrong.
And look at what they say. They say they were given nutritious food and stimulants right before release. I bet that's like they got a little bit of chicken that day and some coffee.
Stimulants.
Secret report, secret Hamas nutrition.
And how much nutrition does it take in a short amount of time? Like, it's crazy to me that they were starving, except for 48 hours before they released, in which they stuffed them like a fucking turducken with all the foods they possibly could, made sure they were nice and fat, like they were harvesting foie gras. And then we
like some witch from a fairy tale, we need to fatten you up for a press.
I'm surprised
for press day.
I'm surprised they didn't go with that angle. They were like, I know you think they look well fed, but have you read this particular which one is that? Which fairy tale where the witch fattens? Hansel and Gretel. Yeah, exactly. Have you read Hansel and Gretel? They were kind of doing like the evil witch Hansel and Gretel thing. That's what Hamas was thinking of the whole time. It is. You'd figure that Israel would maybe take that on, that they would be like, hey, whatever they're doing, we should probably do that, because all of our captives who are in longer than 6 months come out skinnier, weaker looking, and in many times clearly emotionally traumatized.
All their
Yeah.
hair suddenly gray. I mean, on every count, even if you want to say, like, it is kind of, there is something quite striking about seeing these 4 Israeli soldiers, these young women, paraded across the stage with these banners
Yeah.
that say, Gaza is the graveyard of Zionist Nazism, and we are the victors, and we will destroy. There's like, I'm like, man, first, where they still have printing equipment there? Like, they are
And
operational.
The lanyards?
Yeah, they got lanyards. I love that they have a printing. Like, one guy was like, "Oh well, I usually do band T-shirts, but and banners, but I don't know. The idea didn't get me, so I
gave them a package deal."
Yeah.
There's something kind of what can I say, vicious about that, which is but in a kind of a based kind of way, like the resistance groups being like, yeah, we're gonna do a pageant of, and I can feel in my body, like, the shock of when an Israeli would see looking at that, like
100%.
how humiliating. They made us look like total fools.
Which is
okay, fine. Even on those grounds, look at how Israeli soldiers do that same thing. They don't parade Palestinian prisoners across a stage with lanyards and gift bags and humiliating slogans. They take selfies with naked, bedraggled, hooded, shackled, tortured, starving prisoners with the Israeli flag. They make them sing the Israeli national anthem. They make them chant Am Yisrael Chai.
Yeah.
It's a kind of hostile humiliation, a kind of degradation.
Yeah.
That is directed at the humiliating and dehumanizing the person themselves, as opposed to being like, while we have your hostages, we're going to humiliate your whole country.
Yeah.
With this pageant, and I don't know. It's kind of,
and not only that,
it's a contrast in approaches to asserting oneself with hostages.
And it's really just like, beyond that, it's also, they wouldn't even allow, displays of joy for a lot of the Palestinian prisoners who were coming home, like literally following them back into their villages, back into their homes, and making sure that there was no open displays of joy, making sure there was no celebrations, because just the celebrations alone enough were humiliating for them somehow. Somehow they found the idea of Palestinian joy to be a threat.
Well, this is why I think so many people in the movement or on the left, like, kind of do the work of demoralizing our movement for us by never ever celebrating a victory. Like, never, everything is always like, oh, it's 4D chess. The West they know exactly what they're doing. I mean, from my perspective, and based on the research that I did for this book and the people that I'm listening to, like, the Israeli army is incredibly depleted. It's in disarray. There's mass defections. They're rationing bombs. They're, and they desperately needed this ceasefire just from, like, an ability to sustain their military operations. And so, sure, the ceasefire is an opportunity for them to rearm. But they've exhausted themselves against Gaza, and look at the capabilities that Hamas still has, right? They still have printers and lanyard making capabilities. And they're still, they still have broad support of the people of Gaza behind them. They've tried to clear these neighborhoods over and over and over again. And then watching over the last couple of days, the videos of the return of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians moving into the north, all that 16 months, all those bombs you dropped on them, for what? For what? They've gone back to the rubble, and they're not, it's going to be harder to move them this time. So,
I should say that I was on our break. I was scrolling a little bit, and I saw reports of airstrikes somewhere in Gaza, Israeli airstrikes, like in the last hour. I don't know what's going on. It was Abu Bakr who posted it. So we should never, whenever we record any of these episodes, we have to just always include the disclaimer that by the time you hear this, folks, anything we are celebrating, it may
And of
maybe,
course they're going to violate the ceasefire. I mean, everyone knew that. I'm not saying the ceasefire is going to last long term, but I think Israel is destroying itself.
Yeah.
And I think that, it is a win for
humanity.
Gazans.
And the scenes of
this
joy
long.
are
and
the scenes of
and
joy
the scenes
are
of joy are so
undeniable.
threatening.
Yeah.
And that's why the joy is threatening. If Israel felt confident and secure in its winning, it wouldn't have needed to ban Palestinians from smiling. Like,
yeah, it just kind of like proves what the war's ends actually were. That something that they claimed the entire time. Well, this is to get rid of Hamas. We're doing this to get rid of Hamas. We're at war with the Palestinians. We're getting rid of Hamas. And everyone knew it was like, no, this is absolutely collective punishment. This is 100% punitive. You are doing like just blatant war crimes and murder of a civilian population. This is about humiliating them for humiliating us. This is revenge killing. We know what this is. It's clear. And it becomes even more clear when after, the ceasefire is called, quote unquote, without fire actually ceasing, that the thing that pisses them off the most is the fact that they're not hanging their heads in sorrow. They're not crying. The fact that they're displaying any kind of joy to them pisses them off, because it's like, no, you're supposed to be sad. We want you to be sad forever. We want you to be, I mean, they, a lot of them just want them either dead or ethnically cleansed. But at the very least, they want them to be sad and humiliated. And the fact that they
see that quote from Smotrich?
refuse to be pisses them off. No, what did Smotrich say?
He said something like, right now we are seeing expressions of joy, but they will soon be wiped away and be replaced only by the wails of those who have nothing left and the desolation of,
smoke.
Yeah.
They're all Bond villains. Everyone in that fucking cabinet.
Yeah.
that reminds me of that other article about the mental exhaustion of Israelis.
Oh yeah.
The ceasefire. I don't know if you wanted to talk about that one, but basically, I mean, the author Merav Roth was saying, us Israel, it's just,
this is in Haaretz.
Yeah, in Haaretz, we feel so exhausted. It's so hard to be an Israeli. We're so exhausted.
Yeah.
The Gaza ceasefire is a much needed respite for mentally exhausted Israelis.
Right. No consideration of like how mentally exhausting it must have been to be a Palestinian and be displaced.
In fact, in this very long ass article, very long article, there's no mention at all of Palestinians.
No, or of what this has done to them and their mental health. But it ends with like, it ends with the saying like, yes, it's such a relief to not be doing a genocide anymore, but like stay the course, y'all. And that's what basically it seems like what she's hinting at the end. Let us, our lighthouse is the human spirit. Let us row toward it and be inspired by it all the time without losing our way, without drowning just a few meters before reaching the shore.
Oh, we were almost there.
We're almost there. We almost
reached
killed
the
them
shore.
all.
Yeah.
Right? And like all
Can
of
we
this,
not
like,
get depressed right
speak.
before we do the final solution?
Yeah.
Right. And the author's metaphor, I think the shore she's talking of, there's this long convoluted rowing at sea and trying to get to the shore. We've almost reached the shore where we will build condos.
Yeah,
very good.
Exactly.
She's talking about getting the hostages back. That's what the entire article is geared towards, as if there's just some kind of video game quest to rescue some hostages from some mythical land somewhere, and we're going through, as if I can't even finish that sentence. It's just too.
I'm not so sure the
mind-bending.
shore is just getting the hostages back, because I think she's saying we're gonna enjoy this break, but we have to be ready to get back to the genociding.
Let's scroll back to where she first introduces it.
Okay, sure.
It's very.
Is it at the beginning?
Okay, first slide. Not here. Okay, yes, okay, great. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No, first one.
We've been in a great storm trying to row
ever
to
since
the shore.
October 7th, we have all been in a great storm trying to row to the shore. Next. For because she's talking about the entire country's been holding its breath. Some among us have experienced the terrible massacre or have had relatives murdered or taken hostages, and there are others who relate to them in varying degrees of sympathy and awareness, but there is nobody out of the water. Nobody. It is impossible to remain outside the storm because the hostages could have been each and everyone's children or sibling or parent. So the us here is just entirely self-contained in Bunker Israel. It's just,
Right.
you know, they are just citizens whose simple life have been stolen.
Very
The
simple
right
way.
to get up lazily in the morning or to leap out of bed to get the children ready for school and to go to work. The right to stand up tall without thinking of it as some special gift because it is impossible to do so in the tunnel. The right to tell day from night by natural sunlight. And who could have believed the right? So now basically we are all the hostages.
Yes.
We are all forced to be in a psychotic state where whatever we imagine the hostages are going through is now literally what we're going through. Never mind the fact that most of us, that we're living in a country with an iron dome and that no Israeli civilians have died since October 7th.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean,
Except in a couple of random attacks.
Well, yeah, but it's just like this is kind of like the refrain I've been hearing for 15 months, which is just like, don't forget, you are one of the hostages.
That's right.
Matt Lieb from Culver City.
Yeah.
you're in the tunnels with them. And it's this like, yeah, the weird thing, like for me, I look at this and I go like, what the fuck are you talking? No, I'm not. I'm physically not. I'm not even metaphorically also a hostage. But like a lot of people have kind of like bought into this thing where it's like, and I don't blame anyone for having any like empathy or the ability to place themselves in like, wow, what must it be like to be someone who was, you know, taken captive by a paramilitary force. I mean, it's not at all weird to have you know, empathy or sympathy for
it's healthy to be able to imagine
100%
situation.
What I find insane is that all of the articles just like this, or like any of the other like posts that people write about this, they don't seem to be able to apply that to anybody else, including Palestinians.
Yeah.
See, I think that's what's actually mentally exhausting. And maybe that's me projecting a little, but I believe that it's mentally exhausting. There's a Franz Fanon quote I put in my book that the black man is enslaved by his inferiority. The white man is enslaved by his superiority. Martin Luther King also said, race thinking has a capacity to make its beneficiaries inhuman, even as it deprives its victims of their humanity. Like, is Israel, you know, and I talk like Israeli settlers build fences around their settlements on top of the hills, and they live in the cage, right? Like they're in the cage. The Palestinians are outside the cage. Yeah. And I think psychologically, that's what like Israelis have done to themselves as well. They have built like these very thick walls around their empathy, and it's exhausting to keep it up. It must be so exhausting to hold the line of Hasbara in the face of like the entire world turning against
that's
you.
right. And the world has become the storm in her metaphor, that you know, they are buffeted now by winds that they were insulated from for many years of the world.
I just want to suggest to Israelis, like, if you find it this relaxing to have a ceasefire, imagine if you ended apartheid.
Yeah,
can you imagine what a load off that would be?
Yes, 100%. You talk about like, you know, doing things for your mental health.
Yeah.
You want to take a mental health day, maybe take a mental health lifetime and just don't have apartheid anymore. It is crazy. And, you know, this is something that Nelson Mandela talked about a lot too, about the fact that, you know, he believed and he saw with his own eyes, Afrikaners, you know, white Afrikaners were also victims of apartheid, in that by being the oppressors. He talks about a lot that, you know, he wasn't just trying to free his own people, but he was trying to free them from the system that was constantly putting them in a position in which they were living in fear of people who, you know, they were surrounded by. And this is like how it is in Israel, is this constant fear of people that they think they are, you know, surrounded by. You know, they constantly bring up the fact that, like, you know, we're a small state surrounded by hostile Arab neighbors. And
that's the nature of genocidal thinking. We're going to kill you to put ourselves out of our misery.
Right. Yeah. But it's just, you know, it's you know, I obviously when it comes to hierarchies of who I'm going to, I mean, I only have so much empathy space in my brain. So it's not like I can spend too much time crying for Israelis who are being oppressed by being oppressors. But I think it's an absolutely valid point to talk about how exhausting it must be to have to live in this constant state of like, I've got to keep my boot on this neck forever. And you know, and I'm being yelled at now. Like, my foot's tired. I'm being yelled at. This is bullshit. It's you know, it's just crazy. I think what pisses me off, this is one of the reasons why I mostly some of my biggest targets are American liberal Zionists, is you're not even in Israel. You don't you're not even having to be a victim of being, you know, the oppressor who's oppressed or whatever. You know, you're just a bystander who has invented a victim narrative for themselves to fit in. That's the crazy thing to me. It's like you're inserting yourself into a victim narrative. You don't have to defend apartheid. You want to.
Yeah, you're the one with the virtual reality helmet on your fucking head. Take it off.
Take it off for a goddamn second. Yeah. So also, I have another thing that I want to play for you guys. This is a video that recently came out. I don't fully know I think this is like an ad for something. But this was just kind of an insight into sort of Israeli culture in a way that I did not expect to see. So let's just watch this.
Really, something that I've been doing for a while now is a super Israeli behavior. Let's find out what it is. So I have a tiny dog named Lily, and I like to take her on errands with me. When we went to my local Shukersal grocery store, they told me that if I wanted to go in with her, I had to hold her. So the next time I went to Shukersal, I looked for the person that told me this, and when I didn't see them, I did what I wanted and kept her on the ground. So what am I doing that's just so Israeli?
So much of what you're doing is so Israeli.
just being Cartman on that one episode. I do what I want.
I do what I want. Fuck you.
You know, that little dog, I bet, is just like picking fights with every other dog too.
Oh,
like, those
absolutely.
100%.
Like, the reason that she needed to pick up the dog is because that dog's a fucking asshole. Lily might look cute, but Lily is a pest.
Yeah.
Just to summarize so far, she's saying, I went into a grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
They told me there was a rule about having to carry your animal. Nice that they even let your animal in.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't seem like a support dog. It's just a little pet dog.
Yeah.
And then when I went back, I looked for the person who gave me that regulation. And when they weren't there, I did what I wanted. And now she's going to explain to us why that's just so Israeli.
Yes. Here we go.
Paulchi talks about tzliach, which translates to success method, meaning trying to do what you want until someone tells you otherwise. It comes from an old...
I'm sorry.
Shitat matzliach.
What does it translate to? Like
success method.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah.
It's called getting your way. Like,
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
it's called breaking the rules into the last possible moment when someone physically stops you from doing whatever it is you want to do. It's like the funniest thing about this is that, like, first of all, this is not an Israeli thing in general to be like, if I want to pick up my dog and walk in, I'm going to pick up my dog and walk in. But it's also not a compliment to be like, nah, this is what us Israelis do. Yeah. We're constantly breaking international law until someone tells us otherwise.
Yeah, it's a new national concept called being pushy. The funny thing about it is where these two contradictory things meet. On the one hand, you're talking about a collective trait, right? Like, this is what brings us together. This is what makes us us. Yes. What is the trait? Not giving a shit about each other, trying to get one over on each other, not obeying any sense of social contract. we're
Yeah.
so tight and close to each other because we all are trying to fuck each other over, and that's just so Israeli.
That's just so Israeli. It's crazy too, because you could take like what you're doing is taking something that is a universal, I think, behavior, sort of maybe a character flaw that a lot of us have, a little defective character of just like wanting to shirk authority because you believe it's an unjust law, maybe, or because you're just like, well, I don't care what you have to say. You work at a grocery store. But you're taking that somewhat negative thing people do and being like, this is a very specific ethnic thing.
Israeli thing, yeah.
It's like, this would be anti-Semitic
American.
if anyone
Also,
else
she's
said it.
Clearly American, like
Oh,
born
yeah.
and raised in the U.S.
Yes. I mean, that's the other thing, too. It's very funny to be an American Jew who goes to Israel and it's just like, oh, I love it here. Everyone's such an asshole. It's like, oh my God, people think that I'm being mean to Israelis. No, talk to any settler. They're just like, I love it here. We're doing apartheid and everything. Oh man. But let's hear
the Israeli joke it comes from.
Yeah. All right, here we go.
It comes from an old Israeli joke where a diner gets a bill at a restaurant and one of the items listed says matzliach. So we asked the waiter, I didn't order matzliach. And the waiter says, sometimes you succeed, sometimes you fail. In this case, I failed. So, since I am also American.
Not a joke.
Means success.
It's not a joke.
This is what?
It's not a joke. What's funny? Is there a pun, Daniel? In Hebrew, is it funny?
Yeah,
No.
Daniel. What is
joke.
okay?
I mean, I'd have to ask Kadar or someone to explain to me, but I don't get it. But this is what, Israeli humor is like where Yiddish humor goes to be unfunny. Like,
right.
There are, it's like the concept of a chutzpah, right? Which is originally a Yiddish word. Israelis have appropriated chutzpah, and they think of it as like a good thing, right? Alan Dershowitz put out a book called Chutzpah about, well, the classic sort of, what's the word? Parable or whatever about what chutzpah is in the Yiddish sense is a guy who kills his own parents and then throws himself on the mercy of the court, pleading not guilty on the grounds that he's an orphan.
Yeah.
Please have mercy on me.
Yeah.
Your Honor, I'm an orphan. That's the quintessence of the classic Yiddish term. Now, does that sound like a proud national trait, or is it a satirical look at a human tendency that some motherfuckers of all races and religions might, including
if you were
some of
Italian,
us,
you would say, you got balls.
You got fucking stugats.
Oh, you got some fucking balls to come in here and tell me you're an orphan after you killed your parents. That's what chutzpah is. And everyone it's not specific to Israelis. So why take the negative
And
thing?
that's why, this is what I think has gone wrong with Israeli humor, because I thought about this. Because Jewish humor is so inherently self-deprecating. But then, the Jews, they take over Palestine, and they're like, part of the whole Zionist project is they're not allowed to say anything bad about Israel. They're not allowed to be self-deprecating. Like, if you say anything against Jews, then you're an anti-Semite and whatever. So like the self got taken out of the deprecating. So it's just cruelty.
Yes.
It's just being an asshole. That's why their humor is like killing people, destroying their homes, and then dressing up in people's underwear. Like, they think that's hilarious.
Right.
And they think they're making fun of themselves, but all it is self-aggrandizing, because the only self they know is an ethnically supreme one.
Right, exactly. They're all Jabotinsky pilled, so they're all just like, they don't understand how to be self-critical in a way that means anything.
You're a Star Wars fan, Sam. Has someone ever done Jabotinsky the Hutt?
Oh, shit.
No Jabotinsky, no bada.
But yeah, no, like so I was very confused by this Israeli joke. First of all, it comes from an old Israeli joke. What are we talking? 1980? What are we talking?
Yeah, how old can this be?
Come on. What are we doing? You guys old? You just became a country. Let's stop pretending there
Look,
is anything.
Israeli joke is already an oxymoron.
Israeli
you don't
joke?
need to add the qualifier old to make it even more oxymoron.
Right. It comes from an old Israeli joke, 1992. So we recently got an email from someone who wanted to help us out with, some translation and some like cultural context. Dina emailed me, a couple days ago, and then just today I was like, "Oh, I actually have something for you. Explain this joke." That's
great.
Yes, I was like, "Please explain this joke." Glad to. Dina writes, the key to this, to the meaning of this joke, is the Hebrew word used, matzliach, which means success, or it worked out / succeeded. In this context, the waiter put the word matzliach on the bill as a menu item. The diner questioned that item, and the waiter said, "Well, sometimes it works / succeeds." Where the succeeds is overcharging the diner. Okay, if it were written in English, I would have used the phrase "works out" as a billed item on the tab, and have the question asked that I order a works out, with the waiter being, "Well, sometimes it works out for me." I hope this helps. It's not super funny in Hebrew either.
Yeah.
So that's the old Israeli joke that then created the concept of being a dickhead at a grocery store, which is something that she likes about living in Israel. I'm not really sure.
It sure does have like international law implications too, though.
Well, I was just going to say the real life version of this is like, I don't know, murdering a Palestinian family in their home and then spray painting legal killing on the on the house, and then being like, "Why did you do that?" Well, sometimes we get away with it.
Yeah. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's like the international law implications in general seem to be just like when they say, you do something that you're not supposed to do until someone tells you not to. And in this case, the only people who can tell Israelis not to do anything are the United fucking States. And we're not doing shit. So they're just like, all right, have at it. We're walking all of our dogs in every grocery store, and for good measure, we're going to do some ethnic cleansing, apartheid, and genocide.
I hope that Israelis run into that old USian joke, which is fuck around and find out.
Yeah, that's a great joke.
Their entire ethos seems to be fuck around.
Yeah, they haven't found out yet.
They haven't found out yet.
Oh, man.
Not to the extent I would like to see.
From the river to the sea, Israelis need to find out.
Want to hear a great joke? Nobody move, nobody get choked. What's that Run the Jewels song? Something like that.
Oh, yeah. Well, here's an Israel joke about your wife that you might not like. I won't finish that. But yeah, it is. Thank you to Dina Shunra for giving me that translation and
translator in residence. That's so helpful.
I know.
Cool.
It's
every podcast.
nice.
We should have had one of these months ago.
Yeah. In the email, it said like there have been a pretty big amount of mistranslations that may have happened. Luckily, we don't do anything serious on here, so. Anything we're mistranslating was like an Israeli influencer talking about dresses.
Well, sometimes we get away with it and sometimes we don't.
Hey, I love it. But we got away with this episode, didn't we, folks? That was my segue into the ending. Sim Kern, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and talking about this stuff with us.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Yay. Where can people find you? And where can people buy your book?
I'm on all the social medias, I think. So if you search, there are different names on different ones, but if you search Sim Kern, Kern, on those apps, I'm on YouTube, Blue Sky, X, I don't get off any of the impure social medias. I think that's an op.
Oh, yeah?
I'm on all of them, the good ones and the bad.
Diversify the evil.
I'm on Red Note. I've been. Oh, Red Note's interesting. Yes.
My problem with Red Note is that everything's in Chinese.
Yeah, not everything anymore. I mean, there's a lot of translation happening, and there's a lot of they got a translate button now. Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank God!
Yeah, they did that
there's a lot of Chinese, and I'm like, I can't even read Hebrew.
Yeah.
Think I'm gonna learn Chinese? Who's? I don't have the time. Yeah, but so you're on all the social media apps.
On all the social medias. Yeah, I got a Patreon if people want to do that. But the main thing I want people to do is pre-order Genocide Bad. There is a
pre-order
paperback
now.
And a hardcover being released simultaneously.
Oh.
The paperback is available anywhere in the world. If people internationally want to get it, they can go to simkern.com/bookstores to find indie bookstores around the world that are shipping it anywhere. Because we do only have like regular distribution in the US, but there's these bookstores that are helping us all over the world get it to where it needs to go.
I gotta say, it's a great title, and it's a great counter propaganda manual written in a very accessible way, and the way you keep bringing it back to, I mean, what's so great about the title Genocide Bad is this is very simple, folks, and we're going to get complicated with it, but you keep bringing it back to why is it so complicated. You're drawing attention to the ways that it gets overly complicated without ducking from dealing with those complications, but you're always bringing it back to we shouldn't have to be this complicated about it. And I think that's just very, very smart.
Oh, thank you. And I just want to say also, if you're in the US, you can also order special edition hardcover. And that one, 10% of proceeds go to the Middle East Children's Alliance.
Oh, nice.
So that's cool, which I think have been a sponsor of one or more of your episodes, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
And I should say the full title is Genocide Bad, Notes on Palestine, Jewish History, and Collective Liberation. So that's the full title.
It's great. I haven't completed it yet, but I did read about half of it. And my favorite chapter was the one where you go into your own personal history growing up, and you preface it by saying, like, just so you know, yes, I am for a second going to talk about dealing with like person-to-person individualized anti-Semitism during a genocide. So forgive me for that, but here's my story. And your story is fascinating. I think it's, with the caveat, at the beginning, with the warning at the beginning of like, sorry, I'm going to talk about these little things. Then you actually get into instances of anti-Semitism in your life growing up that are completely foreign to me, because I grew up around, Jews. I grew up around so many Jews that like any anti-Semitism that I dealt with as a kid was coming from other Jews, and it was like our favorite type of joke.
Yeah.
And never threatening. It wasn't until college that I met people who had not been around Jews their entire life. And that's when I was first started getting a little bit uncomfortable with some of the things that people would say. I'd be like, wait, if you didn't grow up around Jews, then why do you keep making these jokes? That's not your, but anyways, it's fascinating. And you get into, a history of European anti-Semitism. Like, it's a primer on that I think is so important for people to educate themselves on, because of the fact that you just see the way in which the Israelis have inverted the core tenets of this kind of specified hate to be just inverted to be about Palestinians and about the Palestinian people, and it's brilliant. It's so good.
Oh, thanks, Matt.
Yeah, it really was great. So good job on that, on writing book, because writing book is good. You two both have written book. I've not written book, but I got book idea.
You got book.
I got book idea.
I'll read your book.
Oh, you read my book?
I'll pre-order it today.
Okay. My book is about a lady who's takes like a pill that makes her have 100% brain. So now she can.
Is that what
fly.
they've been developing in Gaza? Is that what?
That's what they've been developing in Gaza. Everyone took the Lucy pill.
Yeah.
Everyone took the pill from
Limitless.
Limitless.
Protein shake.
Yeah.
It's a protein shake that makes you have 100% brain, and then you can fly. So yeah. Anyways, that book upcoming. Watch out for it in 2026. But right now, March 11th, 2025. 2025.
2026 for your book, I see.
For my book, of 100% Brain.
I see.
Your book, 2025, March 11th.
Mm-hmm.
Please get it. Sim Kern. Again, thank you so much for coming on the pod.
Thank you for having me.
Patreon.com/badhasbara. badhasbara@gmail.com for all your questions, comments, and concerns. All right, everyone. Thanks again so much for listening. And until next time, from the river to the sea.
Hold, please. Genocide what? BAD.
You're emotionally damaged. Jewish.
Jumping jacks was us. Push-ups was us. Krav Maga us. All karate us. Taking Molly us. Michael Jackson us. Yamaha Key